Chair thanks the gentleman and recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Farenthold.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I'd like to respectfully disagree with one of the comments the gentleman from New York just made. This line of questioning isn't about email, it's about national security. And to borrow Director Comey's word, someone at the top level of our government being extremely careless with classified information. And I think the other day, my colleague from Texas, Will Hurd, a former CIA agent, made the point that mishandling classified information has real repercussions to our men and women who are working in the intelligence field and actually potentially puts their life in jeopardy. But that being said, General Lynch, are federal employees generally prohibited from removing classified materials from secure area or network and placing it on open or unclassified networks?
Congressman, generally speaking,
it's a yes
the
or
issue
no.
that you're talking about, it would be covered by statute and regulation.
So they're not allowed to do that?
And it would prohibit the behavior that you're talking about.
All right, and are people allowed to retain classified documents in an unclassified environment?
Generally, no.
All right, so let me ask you a question. I'm going to get back to Ms. Clinton for a second. How did this information wind up on her server? I doubt Mrs. Clinton was technically savvy enough to copy it to a thumb drive and move it from one to the other, didn't have the patience to retype it. So obviously some other people took it off classified network and sent it to her. Do you think those people should be prosecuted?
Well, Congressman, with respect to any of the individuals considered in the investigation, as I indicated, I won't be going into the discussions about them. And as I've indicated earlier, and I said I know that this is a frustrating exercise for you. It is because
it is, and it's pretty clear you're not going to answer my questions on it.
So we asked the team to provide information in a confidential manner so that it can be reviewed without their being influenced by any political overtones.
All right, well, it's pretty clear you're not going to answer any of my questions. So you were appointed by the president who called himself, I think, wanted to create the most transparent administration ever. So we're going to quit asking Congressman questions. I'm going to ask some questions that the American people have posted on my Facebook page. Both Mark from Portland, a retired Coast Guard person, and George, also a U.S. Army vet, want to know under oath what you discussed on the plane with President Clinton.
Well, what I can tell you is exactly what we discussed was, as I've indicated earlier, when the president indicated he wanted to say hello, I said he could say hello. He came on board, spoke to myself, my husband. There were 2 flight crew members on the plane. He spoke with them briefly. The former president then spoke at length about his grandchildren.
So y'all didn't speak at all about anything pending, any pending investigations or Mrs. Clinton's problems with the email or the Clinton Foundation or anything like that? None of that was discussed?
If I could continue with what was discussed.
No, I'm just asking if you discussed something that might be relevant.
We did not discuss anything about a case or matter before the Department of Justice. We did not discuss Mrs. Clinton in any way. He spoke about his grandchildren at length.
Okay.
He spoke about his travels.
I apologize for interrupting you. I've
spoke
only
about
got 5 minutes,
what he'd done in
you've
Phoenix.
been very good at burning up the time and stonewalling, and I do want to get to some questions. So have you ever met with anybody else on your plane on the tarmac?
I've not had occasion to meet with anyone on my plane. I have been traveling at the airport, and public individuals have asked to come in and say hello, and I've said hello to them
And have
there.
you had any other meetings of more than a couple of minutes off the books with Mrs. Clinton, President Clinton, or their close associates, Cindy Blumenthal and the like?
I've never had any other conversations with either former President Clinton or Mrs. Clinton before this, except to say hello or was on a photo line.
Okay. And then, all right, so let me get back to
the
the
other
question.
individual you mentioned also no.
All right, so getting back to some of the Facebook questions, Martin from Corpus Christi, also a retired Coastie, would like to know if a military person handled classified information the way Mrs. Clinton does, would he probably have been prosecuted, or she possibly been prosecuted?
So I think that I think we have to look at this from the situation of if the exact same facts were presented and the exact same laws considered, the same conclusion would be come to. That is what both Director Comey has indicated. That certainly I have no reason to view it differently. Every case is viewed differently, but again, if you have the facts as they were presented here and reviewed here, applied to the laws that were reviewed here and analyzed here, that would be the conclusion.
I have one more question to get before I get out of time. This is Stuart, a friend of mine from Luling, Texas. And we've seen several attorney generals that have either been asked to resign or resigned on their own when, and I've used the term loosely, scandals have come up. And I think people have been using that word with respect to this and have suggested you should have recused themselves on this. Should the president replace an attorney general if the attorney general does not enforce the law evenly, or should there be separate enforcement for different classes? And that's Stuart from Luling.
The time of the gentleman has expired, but the general is allowed to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congressman, there's no separate method of enforcement for anyone here. And as I said before, while I understand the frustration of people who disagree with the decision, I will say that it is similar to the frustration I have encountered when I, as a prosecutor, or others who are prosecutors, have to explain to someone why charges are not being brought, if their family member is involved, and the like. And so I understand the emotion that things generate. I understand the frustration that it generates. But it is something that we take very seriously. And as I said before, we follow the law, we follow the facts in every single case.
Thank you. I see my time has expired.